welcome everybody to another episode of Allies in Living with Greg Bicknell and Sorrow with man, who am I with? Lighthouse Healers. Our special guest today is Michael Sugru. And Michael, give us a 30-second spiel, would you please?
Absolutely. My name is Michael Sugru. I'm originally from the San Francisco Bay Area. I was a commissioned officer in the United States Air Force Security Forces for 6.5 years active duty. And after that, I went into civilian law enforcement back here in the San Francisco Bay Area for the Walnut Creek Police Department. Worked a bunch of different assignments. Ended up retiring in 2018 for what I like to call post-traumatic stress injury. And after a couple years long journey of recovery from post-traumatic stress injury, I now speak all across the country. And about a year and a half ago, I authored a best-selling book, Relentless Courage, with Dr. Shauna Springer.
That's fantastic. It's funny how you stuck to those high-risk occupations.
Absolutely, yeah. For me, it was a calling, but obviously, I love the adrenaline rush. I love the excitement. The more, the better back then. Not so much now, but it was a different lifestyle back then.
For sure. Greg, you got some questions, I'm sure, just eating you up over there.
No. I think we have traveled in similar circles, Michael. Shauna Springer, I recognize the names, and I believe we're actually friends on LinkedIn at some point, and kind of travel around. But so, excuse me. So I'm an Air Force vet as well. I'm a 29-year retired chief. And the reason I retired at 29 is I was medically retired at 29. So I kind of feel the background, and I speak for the Air Force Wounded Warrior Program. And the people that they end up predominantly having me speak to when I go out on the road is security forces and cops, because as you know, we both sometimes get the short end of the stick on the holidays and the work hours and all that kind of stuff. So they feel that I can relate. And so it's just something that's kind of neat. So thank you for what you do. And I will tell you that coming on this program could also be considered maybe hazardous duty, just according to, how worked up I get, or maybe Sorrow gets worked up. But no, it should be fun. I appreciate the fact that you're coming on. And, it's always good to meet a fellow veteran at Air Force, and the fact that we've kind of maybe chewed some of the same dirt, but we'll get into that later, I'm sure.
So Michael,
absolutely.
What's your motivation to write a book? How does that come about?
Honestly, it was nothing that I ever planned. It all started actually after I'd medically retired. About a year after that, a guy I didn't know reached out to me. His name was Danny Bird. He was a former police officer, and he was a podcast host. And he was big into fitness. I'm big into fitness. And he reached out to me on LinkedIn. Again, we'd never met. We didn't know each other. And he asked me to be a guest on his show. And I didn't want to do it. I said no at first. And thankfully, he kept bugging me, harassing me, so to speak, to the point where he got me to commit. And he ended up actually driving 2.5 hours to where I live. I met him in a Mimi's Cafe in a back room. He had a video camera set up, laptops and headphones. I'd never done an interview before. And something magical happened after that, because a couple things. The first thing was that up until that point, I was very private about what I had been through in my own personal journey and my own personal recovery. Although I was very public supporter of mental health and suicide prevention, I really wasn't sharing my own truths and my own story. And that one interview actually led to a series of just interview after interview all over the world, from Australia to the UK to Canada. And I started getting messages literally from people everywhere on how my story was their story. And they started sharing their experiences with me, and how, and that's really where you find the healing, is when you find out that you're not alone, that you're not the only one, that there's countless people out there who are going through the exact same things. They're having the same thoughts and the same feelings, the same ramifications on their, not just their personal health, but on their relationships, on their families. And so, thank God. And I really think everything happens for a reason, but that one single interview led to just podcast after podcast. Eventually that led to public speaking. And right before COVID happened, again, LinkedIn is where everything happens, but I didn't know Doc Shauna Springer, but she reached out to me, and she just wanted to introduce herself and kind of let me know what she was doing and see what I was doing. And during that conversation, she actually asked me if I'd ever thought about writing a book. And I kind of laughed, because I had briefly, very briefly thought about it, but honestly, with post-traumatic stress injury, I just didn't have that motivation, that drive, that dedication like I used to get a project like that done. And so we left our conversation at that. A few weeks later, Doc Shauna Springer hits me back up and she's like, look, as my work as a clinical psychologist with tons of military veterans, combat veterans, first responders, she said, your story is just really sticking with me. And your story is going to help countless people. And she said, I want to do this project with you. I want to make this project happen. And again, we never even met in person. This is just our second phone call, but I knew in my heart that it was the right thing to do. And so literally COVID happened. We started this project, not meeting for like the first year and a half. We did everything via Zoom every single week. And we ended up with this life-saving project, this phenomenal book, which is literally helping people all around the world.
That's gives me the chills when you go through it. It's because we all think we're alone. We all think nobody else is suffering, nobody else is going through the same crap and the shoveling the same stuff that I am, and we're not. We literally are not alone if we can just take that first step and reach out. Where did you get that? It's bravery. I'll give it to you to step out and say, you know what, I'm suffering and I need help. How'd you come about that?
Honestly, it's through my journey of recovery because I went through so many different things. I tried different things from talk therapy to group meetings to week-long retreats for post-traumatic stress, like the West Coast post-trauma retreat, Save a Warrior, all these different things. And that journey is what gave me that strength because I realized that this truly was an injury. This wasn't a disorder. This wasn't anything to be ashamed of or embarrassed of, but it was a reality of all the things that I'd been exposed to for many years, both in the military and civilian law enforcement. And to be honest with you, a lot of it turns out wasn't actually like the traumatic incidents on the street per se, but it had to do with admin betrayal or organizational betrayal or moral injury, these things that I'd never heard of before my journey. And so I really came out, I think, a much stronger person, a much better person. And my whole viewpoint on just everything around me, people around me is different. I used to be a very black and white person. And I don't mean ethnic or race wise. I mean, if you broke the law, it's like you're going to jail or you're getting a ticket. I don't care why you broke the law. I don't care what your circumstances are. You did something wrong. Whereas now, it's like, so many of us, I mean, everyone has traumatic things that happens in their life. We all have horrible things personally, with our family members, with our careers, financially, things that we have to deal with. And it's what makes us who we are. And so now instead of judging people, I really empathize with people and sympathize and understand where they're coming from. Whereas before, I didn't care to know any of that.
Yeah,
Greg, how do
Michael, I find that so common and similar, in a lot of folks is they're just trying to figure out where they fit in, right? And the one thing that you said that I'm looking at is I work with veterans and some of the other stuff that I do, and as well as law enforcement and EMS. Did you find a difference in the way that it's perceived, dealing with mental health in the military versus when you went the civilian sector and started working in law enforcement there? Was it a different? Sometimes I've even heard people go as far as to say, when you're in the military, like you almost get extra credit for having PTSD when you get out. That kind of the uninformed, right? But then you go into the law enforcement and it's different. You're retired from the military, you're separated. When you're in the law enforcement or EMS or that, you're still in your job. You're still actively doing your job. And just kind of wonder how that differs the way that you're received or when you said, hey, I, might need to go talk to someone. How is that? How is that for you?
What's interesting is I went into the Air Force in 1998 as a second lieutenant straight out of college, and I was in security forces. I was leading 60-man flights. My first assignment out there, and I don't remember once hearing about mental health. To be honest with you, I know things have changed dramatically
Mhm.
to where now in the military, there's endless resources. There's trainings on it. It's talked about it. People are more open expressing their experiences with it. Where back when I was first in the Air Force and I was in from 98 to 2004, I really never even thought about post-traumatic stress injury, to be honest with you. And, part of that could have been too that, I was lieutenant, then I was a captain. And so I was more a manager, more of an administrator, as opposed to somebody that was out there, on the ground doing it day in and day out. Whereas when I transitioned into civilian law enforcement, which is what I wanted to do, I was no longer a supervisor and I was pushing a black and white. And I was out
Mhm.
there responding to calls and going to, dangerous traumatic incidents, sometimes several times a day, multiple times a week. And so I will tell you that, today, right now, I think that there is much more of a stigma associated with post traumatic stress injury or mental health when it comes to first responders. I think we're getting better. And I think things have gotten dramatically better since I retired in 2018. But I know that we have much, much more work to do. Whereas, the military, like I said, like you said, is that it's accepted. It's almost expected, depending on what your job is. Your AFSC, we call it in the Air Force,
Mhm.
or your MOS in the Army. Or if you've been to combat or you've been to combat zones, those types of things. Whereas I think even the general public, they don't necessarily associate post-traumatic stress with firefighters, paramedics, police
Mhm.
officers, dispatchers, but the public will tell you right away, oh, military, yeah, post-traumatic stress injury. Again,
Right.
it's more accepted, it's more talked about.
And I came in 1990, so I was in for like 29 years, and it did change drastically toward the end. And there's some places now like Living Works that are really doing some amazing things, like for the Spec Ops guys at Hobart Field, and they're really showing that early engagement can help, and really bring down your statistics. Uh, so I appreciate you sharing that because yeah, you're right. In the time that you were in, it really wasn't talked about, and it was a thing to where like I always tell people, it's like, oh, something's going on. Let me get you to the first sergeant, or let me get you. And it was kind of like, where now they're really teaching people how to engage, and I think they're going the right way. But I think where we were at, maybe when you were in, is I think law enforcement and EMS and those folks are kind of catching up to that. I think in the civilian world, because we realize in order to keep people healthy and to keep people performing at their optimum level, it's more than just physical. And I think we're getting a better understand that the further we go. And so I hope, and I just see it getting better. So that was a question I've had posed to me. I had a guy that was in the he's a police officer, and I was military. He said, "Greg, it's different. Like you guys are retired. Like we're still in the midst of our career. Like so, it's different. Like you guys have kind of moved on now. If we go and report, some things may happen, but it is getting better. Luckily, I hear that as well, but it's still not where a lot of us want it to be. So I appreciate you being so candid with that.
And as
Absolutely. And that's why I'm on the show today, is
Mhm.
because this is what it's all about, is us just having discussions about this. And this is
Right.
where we need leaders at all levels, whether it's the military or first responders, to be real, to be transparent, to be vulnerable. And that's the key to this whole thing, is that if we just honestly, express who we are and what we're dealing with, and we are comfortable in a zone or an area or an environment where it's trusted, it's safe, then we can get this off our chest. We can get this
Mhm.
off our shoulders, and we can move on and we can get through a full career and come out healthy the other side. But,
Yeah.
most of us just bottle it up and bottle it up and bottle it up till we get to a breaking point. And that's
Mhm.
where I came in, is that I suffered in silence after a fatal officer involved shooting, to the point where I literally lost everything, my marriage, my health,
Mhm.
my career started going down, and I literally got to the point where I didn't want to be here anymore. I literally wanted to die in the line of duty, and I started
Mhm.
purposely putting myself in dangerous situations, hoping a bad guy killed me on the streets. And that's how
Wow.
bad it got. And that's
Yeah.
why we need to talk about it early on and not wait till we get to these breaking points.
I agree 100%. Absolutely. What were you going to say, Sarah?
I was going to go on the preemptive side of there, and we started with the preemptive to before you have the trauma. Here's how we deal with the hard, stressful situations, especially when you said it's more than once a day. Even that kind of hit me. It's like I'm thinking, oh, it's once a day. You can kind of go home and take care of that one a day thing. But if it's more than one a day, that's son of a bitch.
It is. And,
Yeah.
you look at now with our staffing levels, I mean, almost every first responder agency, whether it's fire departments, ambulance service, police officers, we're all understaffed. Officers are working mandatory overtime. They're not home with their families. They're working during holidays, and there is no break and there is no downtime. And it's from call to call to call to call. And that's also, I think, what sets aside, if you look at first responders versus military members, and I'm not putting one over the other, but let's say that you're in the military and let's say that you're in combat, which, a lot of people, first of all, in the military never see combat. They're never in hostile zones. They're never in direct combat. But let's say that you are. So you're in this defined, known hostile area. There's a known threat. Maybe you're there 6 months. Maybe you're there a year. Maybe you do that a couple times throughout your career. But as a police officer, you're literally in combat every single day for 30 years sometimes. There is no safe zone. Every single call, every single contact is a potential lethal or deadly threat.
Do you find yourself like, when you left the military, like that day-to-day grind, and now that you're kind of moved on from both of them and you're in this, this portion of this chapter of your career, that when that went away, even though you had went and you had some, issue, you had some stuff you're working through, PTSD or PTS, however you want to lay it out, that you still, even though that it was probably good that you kind of went through and are getting the help and all that stuff, but you miss it. Like you still kind of miss the adrenaline rush that happens from it, or you miss the camaraderie of the folks that are around you, like Air Force, police department, military services, all that. We're used to having a ton of people around us, a lot, all the time, because we go to roll calls and we go to, similar type setup. Did you miss that? Is that something that you were like, man, I'm really glad I moved on, but man, I really miss the people? I know that was something that hit me really hard.
I absolutely do miss it. And I'll tell you, even the military and law enforcement, I think is very different. I think when I was in the Air Force, I think there was much more camaraderie. I think there was much more a feeling of family. And one of my biggest regrets is actually not staying in the reserve side. I wish I would have stayed in the reserves and then also gone into civilian law enforcement. I had a lot of friends that did that, but I made a decision to get completely out in 2004. And I'll tell you right now that my time in the military is literally some of the best times of my life. And I made friends that to this day are some of my best friends in this world, ones that I talk to frequently, that I see a few times a year. And, then I move into law enforcement, which, don't get me wrong, that's still a feeling of family. There's still camaraderie. But in my experience, I found that it was a lot more cutthroat. I found that there was a lot more, this is hard to say, but people that were, looking for special assignments or promotions, and all these opportunities would come up, and it was just really, really competitive, and everyone was out for their own. And, I really do miss both. I'm grateful that I'm retired because I can focus on being a father to my beautiful daughter. I think I'm a better father now than I was when I was working. I can, truly enjoy life now. But yeah, there's definitely parts that I miss. I miss the excitement. I miss the adrenaline rush. I miss the unknown, that every day is always different.
Mm-hmm.
And what are you doing? What are you doing now for the adrenaline rush?
Well, I do go to
the public speaking is an adrenaline rush in its own.
Well, I hate public speaking. That's the funny thing is that, and I only do it 4 or 5 times a year. I do limit it, but I really hate speaking. I don't enjoy it. I'm glad after I do it because I know that it's serving a purpose. And when I get to meet people afterwards and talk with them, that's what I actually enjoy. But the experience of speaking and leading up to it, I get very anxious. I get very nervous. I get stressed out. But I know that, I'm doing this for a reason. It is my purpose in life. And I think it's important having purpose. When I was in the military, I had a purpose. When I was in the police department, I had a purpose. And even though I'm retired now, and I could have just gone away quietly, I could just be at home. I could have never associated anymore with anybody in the military, anybody who's a first responder. But yet now I have this purpose that still keeps me engaged, that still keeps me in touch with both the military community and the first responder communities. And so, but as far as the adrenaline goes, I don't have anything where I'm really getting that adrenaline. I mean, I work out every day. I love going hiking. I constantly go to like concerts and sporting events, but all those things are just fun. I'm just literally enjoying life. I'm living life to the fullest now.
Did the let me as you were talking, I was sitting there, I'm thinking about it. I'm like, you know, as you're kind of going through and you're getting set up and you're in your daily life, do you find that what you're doing now, like even coming on here, is therapeutic? Because I know for me, sometimes like doing this for me, I'm still healing from stuff, still going through. That it feels very therapeutic that I'm able to give back. I'm able to still serve. I'm able to do it in a capacity maybe that someone else might not be able to or be able to articulate. Do you find that that's as much sometimes like me, I almost feel guilty sometimes. 'Cause I'm like, did I get more out of that or did they? Right. Do you ever kind of feel like, you know what, this is really helping me move along as well?
No, it absolutely does. I mean, every time I do an interview, every time I speak, it's the stuff comes off my shoulders. The weight of everything is lessened, and I think more importantly that it's this camaraderie, it's this sisterhood, this brotherhood of meeting new people like you. And when I go to conferences and I go to training events, it's like my family keeps getting bigger and bigger. And what's ironic is that now I meet people who I can literally call day or night, and we can talk about everything and anything. And I'm my true, open, honest, transparent self. But back when I was working, I mean, I literally had maybe one or two people in my entire life that I could even trust or talk to about these things. And now I
Mhm.
literally have hundreds of people that I can reach out to, that I can trust, and I know that they're going to have my back, and they know I'm going to have their back. And so, absolutely, I mean, it's still healing, it's still therapeutic.
And that's great because I mean that's really and I wanted to hit that, and that was a specific reason. That was kind of a leading question, but I love what you had to say because that's why we built what we're doing here, this allies in living. We had a lot of options to choose names, but it was like allies in life, but it's in living because that's how we want it to be. We want this to be that group with you and with us that really folks can come to and maybe sit back and be like, you know what, those dudes are just like I am. And the reason that it's not overly structured when we come in, we didn't send you, like a sheet and say, please fill out these 19 questions or whatever, kind of like some
Oh,
podcast will be or whatever.
I
We
won't do
like it
it.
to be, we like it to be very free flowing and open. You know what I mean? Because it's got to be
Yes.
authentic. People know when you mean it from the heart. They can tell you can't, you can read off a script or whatever, but when you just have these conversations, you don't truly know where they're going, but you know where it's leading to, and that's just to become a bigger brotherhood. That's what's amazing, and that's what I love about this. And I'm just as we sit here and talk, it's like, man, it's like three friends sitting here talking, and that's kind of what as we started out and we talked, and we have our original episode, and that's what we said in there. If you people go back and look at that first episode, they'll say, you know what, we want to just to gather and help folks and have them have a place to come, and to know that you're free to express yourself, you're free to talk, you're free to chat, and when we leave this podcast or we leave this YouTube channel, or we leave this interview, you can still reach out to me. And I guarantee you I'm going to reach back out because that's what we're building is this massive army of folks. And this is exactly what this program is about, allies in living, because that's what we're doing. And we're going to grow. And I'm just, like I said again, I'm glad you're on here. Sarah always likes to surprise me because he likes to see my reaction. And I can tell when he's giddy because he kept texting me today going, oh, you're going to like this guy. Oh, he's right down your alley. So, it's pretty cool. But I always he likes to see sometimes he'll get people and he gets me kind of kind of catch me off guard. But this is, and I always love those folks too. But this is great. I just, yeah, I'll turn it back over to Sarah, but I really appreciate the fact you're coming here. And I like the fact that you're just straightforward and honest about it because you're right. We don't move forward unless we really get it from the heart. And there's so much that I hid. I had my mask on for years and years. And then I had a brain surgery and I couldn't put the mask on anymore. And then I went to the same depths that you did. I didn't want to be here anymore. And when I hear somebody else talking about that story, you're a few years ahead of me as to where I tell Sarah I'm going. I actually enjoy speaking, right? I like doing that kind of stuff. But I got a book that's, all that kind of stuff. So you're kind of like I'm looking at you going, I gotta call this guy when we're done because I gotta ask him some more questions that aren't about what this YouTube channel's about. But anyway, I'm excited that you're here because you're doing it, man. I mean, you're where I want to be. And I
I was
think
gonna
that's
I'll take you back on that, Greg. Actually, that is what this channel is about. It's about the camaraderie side of it. And
mhm.
you guys are not going to be the only ones that want to speak. You're not going to be the only ones that want to write a book. The people listening to this are going to want to speak about their challenges they came through. They're going to want to write a book and let the people know that, man, you're not the only one out there. There's thousands of us with the same scenario going through our poor brains. We're in it together for sure. It's about the camaraderie and a big aspect of it.
Absolutely. And we all have a story. It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what you do for a living. We all have a story. And like you already said earlier, that sharing our story, not only is it healing for us, but it's healing for others. And so I say more the merrier. I mean, the more
Yeah.
people that want to get out there and share, whether it's speaking or interviews or writing books or whatever, I say, let's do it. Let's work together. Let's help each other out. Let's get this message out there.
Yeah,
So I always try to find this one clip. Like I saw it on a documentary. It's Clint Romeshay, Medal of Honor winner. He was in the Hornet's Nest and all that stuff. He was being interviewed, and they asked him about talking about what he went through and what he does. And he made the statement. I always keep trying to find that clip because it was so perfectly said. And he said something in line of, well, I think we have to share our story because the folks that came before us, they didn't, and they suffered long after the war
Yes.
was over. And we're trying to break through that now. And so he didn't say it in those particular terms, but that's what I took out of it, paraphrasing. But he said, you know what, I like share. I want people to share their story. I'm going to share my story because I think it gives people hope. It also gives people someone they can relate to, which is why those retreats and all those things, I love those things are amazing because you get to meet people that are in your same ship, your same boat, your same crew. But when he said that, I'm like, man, you know what? You couldn't be more right. And it's just one of those, you know what? We're all on the same team here. Sometimes we forget that. If you watch the news, you'll really think we're not, but we're all on the same team. We're all we're all on the same planet. And it's just about kind of getting through that. But when you get it through it together, it's a hell of a lot easier than trying to go through it by yourself.
Absolutely. And, in my book, my friend John Davison, he's a Vietnam veteran. He's one of my best friends. He actually saved my life. I don't want to give it away here, how that happened. We talk about it in the book. But to your point, I never knew what he had been through. I never knew
Mhm.
about his experiences because his generation didn't talk about it. They didn't share it. And it
Mhm.
wasn't until a very tragic incident that I later found out about some of these things that he went through. And he talks about it in the book. But this is where, we need to change things. We need to change how it used to be or how it's been. And we need to change it to how it's going to be. And now we're going to make it to where it's normal, it's accepted, it's celebrated to have these kind of conversations and to share these stories.
Mhm. Absolutely.
what I was going to ask you is the post PTSD side of things as well. I want people to know that even after PTSD, there's still things you can do. There's still camaraderie. There's still this engagement with, again, now sharing your story. That's I like the term. It's a story, not your story, because when it's your story, man, you're in it, and you're still suffering the repercussions of the story. As opposed to telling a story, you're through the traumatic control it has over you. It's just a story now, but there's something afterwards that's out there for you once you're done your PTSD. Did you ever have that kind of what's after if I get healed from this thoughts?
I literally was more scared than anything because I figured that, law enforcement, the military was all I knew. And I didn't know what I was going to do. And it all kind of just fell in line, like I said, with having this purpose. None of it was planned. None of it was expected. It's literally evolved. It's still evolving as we're sitting here talking today. And I don't know what, next month's going to bring or next year's going to bring, but I'm on this momentum and I'm riding it as far and as long as I can because I know that it's making a difference. It's making a difference for me, but I know it's making a difference for every single person that I meet. And I really think that where most people fail is when they lose their sense of purpose and they have nothing left. And we can all find a new purpose. And that's the key is that one chapter, one door may be closed, but there's a way to move on and use your past, use your experience in a new way and to find a new family and a new community and to make another difference. Because that's the thing is that, most everyone that goes into the military or goes into being a first responder, we want to make a difference. We truly want to make the world a better place. And even though that chapter is closed for me, I can still do those same things just in a different way.
Was
That's
there a
powerful.
point? Was there a point like you're working through this that you're kind of like I'm back? Like I went through this when the military, and then after the military, went through it law enforcement, and I'm helping people, and I've kind of found my niche. So I'm like, you know what? I'm being productive. I'm being positive. I'm on track. I've hit the rails. And now this is something that I know that I can sink my teeth into again, that gives me energy and just makes me want to go out there and help, anyone and everyone I can. Was there that point that you can like that moment that you said, you know what, this could be it? Maybe it was when Dr. Springer was talking to you. But it's like this could be it, like you have that moment, that epiphany, that aha moment. Did you have one of those? Or you said you kind of slid into it maybe?
Yeah, like I said, it evolved over time,
Hmm.
and the book was something that I never imagined. But I do think that everything happens for a reason. And when Doc Springer called me back, we had that second conversation, and she had already written 3 books. She's a very successful published author, known around the world, and just the thought that this person, this renowned expert on trauma, wants to
Hmm.
do a book with lowly me, this street cop from the San Francisco Bay Area. It was like, wow, like this is just incredible. And so yeah, I think that was an absolute pivotal moment. And even with that, so there was the process of doing the book, and then once the book came out, it was like, holy cow, like this thing is that people are actually reading it. People actually like it. They're sending messages. They're writing reviews. And that's the thing, is that our book is so unique, because I don't know of any other book like it, where you get a raw, gritty, just unflinching look at the life of a first responder, but then you get the balance of a culturally competent clinician who comes in and she breaks everything down. She explains everything in very easy to understand terms, so that literally anybody on this planet can understand what we go through and what we deal with. This book, obviously, it's read by many military members, first responders, their family members, loved ones, but I've heard from many people who have no affiliation with either the military or being a first responder. And this book has changed their entire perception and view of who we are behind the badge and behind the uniforms.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's the thing, is you never know who you're going to touch, right? So when you're doing this job, and you never know that one simple word or that word of encouragement, I always like those things where someone just says hi to another person, and then you get the feedback later on that that person was really on the way to do some harm to themselves. But that one person that took that moment to actually care about them or say hi, something that simple, totally changed the trajectory of the rest of their lives and everything about them. And that's just, to me, that's really cool. It's because something happens, you do something positive with it, other folks hopefully feed from that. But you just never know. You never know when someone might need that encouragement or read that book, even though it's written from a EMT, first responder, whatever it's written from, you put yourself in the book. You're like, oh my gosh. As you were talking earlier, I'm going, hang on a second, did he read my bio? You know what I mean? Like I'm looking through it because it's relatable, right? But you're stepping up and really putting it in a way that's very articulate. It's easy to understand, and you've got with a clinician, a professional that says, "Hey, we're going to make even more sense of this, other than just tell a story. We're going to tell a story and then tell you how to help." So I think that's great.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a pathway to healing, and there's
Mhm.
tons of resources in the book. And that's the key, is like you said, usually you have to choose one or the other. You can either read just a gut wrenching story and that's it, or you can go get like a clinical textbook on psychology, and you can learn about, post traumatic stress injury, anxiety, depression, all these other things. But no, in this case, you get it all in one. You get everything that you need in one single book.
So
There's
cool.
a term. There's a term you kind of even glossed over there. Not a term, but a phrase you said where it's, who am I to have this clinician to even want to do a book with me, or who am I to write a book? Or that's a powerful thing. Of it's just a one-on-one where you don't have to be this stellar person that you're the greatest speaker, you're the greatest of that. We're just us doing what we can to help others out. That's a and we just glide over it, but it's an important part of you're good enough. You are good enough to do whatever you need to do.
And that's where it comes with being real, with being
Mhm.
honest and transparent and just being real. And you guys already said it earlier, but that's what resonates with people, because especially first responders and military members, we can tell the bullshit, and we can also tell the other side of it when people are just being raw and they're being real. And that's where the power comes in.
Yeah, there's a thing I tell people, like, when you're out there and you're dealing with a military person, one, you're going to look them in the eye, or an EMS, like you look them in the eye and you can kind of tell, because they're going to look right back at you and you're going to have that conversation. And you really don't have to say a word sometimes. Sometimes the eyes communicate with each other, you know what I mean? And so, as I would always talk to my kids when we were growing up, I'm like, you teach people how to treat you, but you're the only one that's with you 24/7. And if what you're doing in that time frame makes you happy, and you're going with it, and you lay your head down at night, it's a fantastic feeling. But to be able to have someone else that you can transfer that ability for them to be able to do that, that's a game changer. Because in order to get that confidence to kind of step up, you always know what's on this side of no, right? Like if you'd have said no, Dr. Springer, no, no, no. You always know what's on this side of no. It's just we never know what's on the other side of yes. And when something traumatic happens and something crazy happens, sometimes we're afraid to take that next step and to say yes again, and to say, you know what, I'm worthy. I should be writing this book. Yes, I'm glad you came to help me. And then moving forward. But we always know what's on this side of no. But on the other side of yes, look where you're at now. Look where we're all sitting here having this conversation. And I think that's a testament to exactly, the resilience of what you had, and kind of the way you went through it. And then you had somebody that saw something in you didn't see in yourself. And I think that's the other part of it, is when someone reaches out, I tell people, it's like when someone reaches out and they trust you, they're going to give you a job. Don't talk them out of it. Just say thank you, and you'll learn on the fly, right? And if it doesn't work out, you move on. But I think that's so cool, because you allowed someone that saw something in you that you didn't quite see in yourself. And now look at this. I mean, it's just something beautiful's happened. And you've had the ability to touch the lives of so many, and you're still going to continue to do that. And that's something that, that's leaving that legacy kind of thing behind. That's leaving where you say, you didn't intend for it to happen, but yet now you've got something that says, you know what, I went through these two careers. I did a lot of really cool stuff in those two careers, but now this is going to live on well beyond those years I was in the military, and well beyond those years I was because this book is on print. It's there forever. It's there. People can reach out to it. And that's such a cool thing to leave behind. And you're continuing to come out and, speak with us, which again, I appreciate that, and allow to get the word out about go look, because I'm telling you, Sarah knows this already. He knows that I'm surprised I haven't read your book. But your book, if I would have known you were coming on, it would have been read before I show up. And I don't mean that in any way. It's just I read a lot, and I will be giving you feedback on the book and be like, oh, dude, thanks. I need a signed copy. I send you come on. But I love what you're doing. I can't wait to get a hold of the book, because you are so authentic, and you're just so comfortable in who you are, and it just exudes, through the screen. And I hope people see that as well, and take the opportunity to go and grab a copy of the book, and then maybe go out and listen to you speak. I think that's fantastic. I want to come and hear you speak. I want to heckle you. No, I'm just playing. That was the maintainer versus cop talking. That was the maintainer versus cop talking. But no, I mean, I can't wait. I can't wait to hear what just to listen. I'm going to go back and check some more stuff out. But just awesome.
I can tell you that this book will blow your socks off, and I will make a promise to both of you, is that after you do read it, hey, I'll come back on and we can have a whole nother discussion, a whole nother interview, because really it's very unique. And the cool thing is, we actually released the Audible last spring, and so it's in our own voices, both Stock Springer and I, straight from our heart. So you can either read it or you can actually listen to it, which is just like hearing me speak in public as well, but just very, very powerful. And I guarantee you will not be able to put it down once you start it. Guarantee.
Audible, you're talking my language now. So Audible, I'm always sending Sarah copies of, hey, check out this book I'm reading now. Like I read 7 to 10 books a month. And sometimes I'll actually go through more than once, multiple, maybe 4 or 5 times on some of them. And so I'm looking forward to it, because I take little nuggets and little passages, and I'm going to accept that offer now, because I'm going to tell you personally, you can guarantee you got at least one book sold. And if Sarah's too cheap to buy his own, I'll buy one for him and mail it to him. Right? So sorry, I'm getting a little carried away, but seriously, I would love to, let's set that up, because I'm going to check it out, and I'll shoot you a message, and we'll get back on here when it's all done. I think that would be really cool.
And we're still any pre-questions we're still about sending to you.
Absolutely. It just makes for a much more powerful conversation, and that's, I usually like to have people read it ahead of time if they can. It's not always possible, but it really makes for just a really just groundbreaking conversation.
That'd
Yeah.
be cool.
Well, what we'll do is we'll take this and make you the #1 book on the planet, right? And we'll grow that and get you some sales out of it, so get you paid for your time and all that good stuff, and get people revved up. They'll go and buy the book, because that's what we like to do too. We always talk about we want to give back, right? And I laugh and joke because I like to have a good time, but it is. I am serious about that. Is we like to give
Yeah.
as much as we receive. It's just fun. And to be able to go and do that, and maybe help you get a few sales, because if I like it, I'm telling you, I'll be on there like, hey, here's my monthly recommendations. I do that from time to time on Facebook and LinkedIn and stuff. You go back there and look. But yeah, I'm looking forward to reading it now. So I gotta go read a book. I'm just playing. I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere.
Well, I'll tell you this. So we're a self-published authors, and just to give you an example, as of today, just on Amazon alone, we have 495 reviews. And out of those, I think there's 390 written reviews with multiple paragraphs straight from the heart. And you don't see that with books, with thousands of stars. I mean, this book is literally, it's saving marriages, it's saving careers, but most importantly, it's saving lives. And that's why I'm so confident to say, brother, it is going to rock your world, because when you're reading it, you're going to be reading your story. Guarantee.
That's cool. But I'm gonna hold you to that. If it doesn't rock my world, I'm gonna go on live TV
Please
and be
do.
like, you know what, But I'm sure it's going to. Seriously, you're just having fun, but I'm sure it's going to. I have no doubt about it. Like I said, as authentic as you are, and as open and free as you've been with your story and with us, like I said, I can only imagine what's inside the book. And like I said, I'm looking forward to reading it. So it's probably going to be in Audible before we even get done with this podcast, because I've already been looking it up. And so it'll get purchased, and then
Awesome.
it'll be in queue. So when you said Audible, I was hooked. I would have read it hard copy, but when you said Audible, man, I'm in.
I know, and I wish we would have done it sooner. We had the book out for over a year, and we decided to do the Audible after the fact. And I'm so glad we did it, because, nowadays, I mean, of course you have people with TBI or brain injuries, or just, they can't actually read a book, but so many people are so busy where now you can drive in the car, you can be at the gym. Like, I like to listen to them when I'm getting ready in the morning or when I'm taking a shower, those types of things. And especially in this case, it's from our own voice. We didn't want to hire some voice actors or anybody like that. I mean, I don't have the perfect voice, but the thing is, it's my story, and it's Doc Springer's story, and it's straight from our heart and soul. And it's going to resonate, and it's going to come through those speakers, and you're going to hear it coming straight from our heart.
Yeah, no, I would expect nothing less based on this conversation. So really cool.
There's another term you said, it's about saving lives, but it goes beyond saving lives. It makes it a life worth living afterwards, because saving a life, if you're stuck in your misery and your hell, man, that's something we need to get out of. That's where you save a life, is get them out of that misery and into a joyful life. That's the goal.
Well, I'm living proof of that. I have a whole new life now, and it's something that I never imagined. And I look back now, and all the horrible things that I endured and went through, I would not change a single thing, because it led me to where I'm at today, right now. And I know I'm a better person. I know I'm a better partner. I'm a better father. And I'm actually living life. Whereas before, I was not living life. I was not here. I mean, I was here physically, but I was not here emotionally, spiritually. And now it's like, man, I'm so, because it's like, I want people to know, as horrible as it is, as bad as you think it is, because I was there. I mean, the absolute worst, to where I literally wanted to die, to come out that other side. And it wasn't easy. And it didn't happen overnight. It took a lot of work. It took a lot of different things. But trust me, you can get there. I don't care where you're at in life. I don't care how bad things are. You can come out the other side.
That's awesome.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Yeah. And that, when you hear somebody with that kind of conviction, it's just like, I love it. Like I said, I love it, because I love when people, like, you're speaking into my soul, and you're speaking like, I see Jelly Roll up on stage talking about, being over 40 and winning the award for newest artist and all that kind of stuff when he did it. The new artist. I didn't even know who Jelly Roll was, but I thought it was a cool video, right? But it's one of those things that you set your mind to it, and you start pressing forward. And then you just get that group around you that, again, for you, Doc Springer, you get those people around you that say, I believe in you. And I've had a couple of those moments. One was really soon after I'd retired, and it changed my life because the guy said, "You know what? I know who you are today. I'll take that guy." You know, and
Absolutely.
and where you were at, she knew your story. You guys, you talked about it, and she said, "You know what? I know your story, and I want to write a book. We want to put a book together. I want to put this out there." And look, and you did, and that's where we got to go. Let's be there for each other. Let's pull people along. Like you might have to push somebody at some points, and other times you may have to
Yes.
pull them. But either way, you just keep inching forward, right?
Absolutely.
The powerful, powerful comment you just made. Again, you just glide through these things. It's just so common. Is grateful for your journey. Can you imagine the hell that you've gone through to get to hear that you're grateful for it? When you just, I've been trying to express that to people of how can you possibly be grateful for your journey? But you just said it, and it was the way you said it. Even was it's pure joy of the journey. What a beautiful comment.
Absolutely. And I used to be so focused on my career. I wanted to be chief of police someday, and I had my whole life planned out, and I was achieving all these things and going step by step. And I look back now and I realized that if a lot of this hadn't happened to me, I'd still be working. I'd probably be a captain somewhere, maybe a police chief. I would not be an involved father. I'd probably be on my fourth divorce right now. And literally, I'd be miserable, absolutely miserable. And what I realized is that prestige, those ranks, those positions, they don't matter. You know, I mean, don't get me wrong, being a police officer was an absolute calling for me, and I know I made a difference. I loved my job, but it was a job, and I lost sight of what was most important, and that's my family, my loved ones, my true friends, the people around me. And to have that back, man, it's priceless, absolutely priceless.
Yeah, I'm stuck for words there, Greg. Over to you, man.
So yeah, no, as you're saying that, I just did a thing where I moved back up to Central Florida from the Keys. I was living there, and I moved up for my family, and I was gone so much during my military time. And then, after I bought surgery, I didn't I really didn't know what was going on for about a year. And I put them kind of through hell and some stuff. And so when I hear, and it's so relatable to what you're saying, uh, it is one of those things. I appreciate the fact that you make that comment, that I'm glad I went through it. It sucked when we were going through it. I'm sure it
Yes,
wasn't like, it wasn't what you would have written up in the life of, the life of your life that you're going to go through. But it's something that once you've gone through it, you're like, you know what? I now see people in a different perspective. And I think you mentioned that
yes,
earlier, is now you can relate more than you could when you were the black and white guy. Now you can relate more than when you were running the group of 60 folks, because now you're humbled a little bit. I know I was. And you're like, man,
yes,
the military used to say, mission first, people always. And when I speak for Air Force Wounded Warrior Program, headquarters Air Force, I'll say it should be people first, people always. And the mission takes care of itself. But when I was in, you get so focused, like you were saying, on that. No kidding, what do I have to get done today? What is my job? What is the goal? What is my next step? What's my next rank? That sometimes we forget about those that actually allow us the opportunity to get there: our families, our children, the folks that support us no matter what, good, bad, or indifferent. And again, more that authentic talk. And I appreciate that, because it means something to me, because I hear you saying it. I'm going, man, I wish he would quit. You're just jabbing it deeper and deeper in there and going, man, this is, and I'm like, that's exactly what I went through. And it's good though, because you
yes,
have to have those conversations, and you have to self-reflect, because there's only so much that, you can take. And then at that point, you have the breaking point. And then how do you respond? And the way that you respond is with some positivity. You took something that was negative, something that really didn't go so well, not like you would have written it up, but now you've taken it into something positive, but you have a story to tell, and you're willing to share it. That means the world, because people can relate, and that will allow them to come forward and maybe to tell their story and prevent us from having to tell a different one. And I think
absolutely.
that's what it's about.
Couldn't agree more. You hit it right on the head.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
the more people we get telling more stories, the more camaraderie we'll have around it as well. It already is a beautiful group. It'll be just beyond what we can imagine.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
no.
Michael, as we kind of wrap up, I love to end on a story. What was the first pinnacle on your journey to healing, if you would, for a kind of a story to wrap up? And Greg, will get you on the same kind of theory if you got a story in mind as well afterwards, Greg.
Okay.
I'll tell you that it was absolutely critical. So I had gone off on injury, and unfortunately, there was some real bad experiences up front with some doctors and things like that. But once I got connected with my therapist, not Doc Springer, but my therapist I ended up seeing for a few years when I was going through recovery. On the day that we met, I was super nervous. I didn't know anything about her. I had had a friend who had gone and seen her, and so I had good words. I heard good things about her, but she was this big, tall Viking lady. And I remember when I went into her office, very just genuine, warm smile. She closed the door. We sat down, and she told me a very traumatic personal story, something that happened to her and her family. And it was just honestly unimaginable. And, the fact that she trusted me enough to share something so personal, but more importantly, to see that she was living proof that no matter how bad things are, and trust me when I say, like, I was just shocked when she told me this story, that she was sitting in front of me so positive and she had turned her entire life around. I knew in that moment a couple things. I knew that I could trust her with my life. I knew that I could tell her anything and everything, that I could bare my entire soul to her. But I also knew that she could show me the way to a whole new life, to coming out the other side. And so, I wish I could say her name on here, but she was just absolutely critical and pivotal to my entire journey and my entire recovery.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
I got the chill bumps massive on that story because I've talked to a similar situation with another woman who, again, when she tells her story, she's just telling a story. It's like, how can anybody possibly get over that? And she was
Yes.
not over, she was beyond it. Over to you, Greg. And
Well,
good luck following that up.
yeah, I know. Way to set me up there. So, but no, but I go back. So I have a friend, and I talk about him often, and he and I talk very often, and his name's Kerry Stewart. And Kerry is in a similar deal. He has a yoga studio out in Kansas City, and he works with folks and does speaking engagements. But when I was really going through a rough time, this is a couple of years ago, I was just work wasn't going well. I was frustrated. I wasn't mentally where I needed to be. I was very depressed. I was kind of distant again from my family, and kind of just throwing myself at work and not throwing myself at the family like I needed to. My buddy Kerry saw me, my Facebook post and different things I put out, and he called me and said, "Greg, I got this place I need you to come to." And I said, "I don't know." He goes, "No, I'm kind of like, well, I'm not really asking. You know what I mean? You need to come out here right now for your own best interest. You need to come out here." And it was a week-long retreat. It's in Kansas City, and I talk about them like Warriors Ascent, but it changed my life. And they run Mike Kinney and his crew run a good program out there. But it took that first part to where Kerry Stewart, a good friend of mine, we've been friends for over 30 years, to where he noticed something different. And this wasn't, like he did it from a compassionate standpoint because he knew me. We had taken a chance to get to know each other. And I say that because I think in this world, a lot of times we get caught on text messages and emails, and we're very informal, and we don't truly sit around the table or the campfire or wherever as much as we used to. And I think if a situation like this, to where we can have three people having a conversation that honestly, we didn't truly know each other before we came on. Cyril, I met him a couple of years ago, and he said, "Hey, Greg, I want to talk to you about this thing I'm doing." And then, "Hey, I'm going to hit record," and I look like I had just come out of it, wrestling a bear. So, but it was one of those things where we can learn to just sit around and truly look at people and say, "You know what, man, you just don't. Something's a little off." And are something I can help you with. And I think when we get to that point that we're comfortable enough asking, and we're also comfortable enough responding when someone does it and you don't get offended, that's when we really truly move forward. And I appreciate, you know, I've taken leaps and bounds since I've met Sarah, and I know I'm going to take I've taken leaps and bounds tonight just in this conversation. And I know I'm going to
Amen.
take more when I read that amazing book. And then we have the follow-up conversation. But it's just
Absolutely.
stuff like this to where you had to say yes. You had, we weren't in this conversation if you didn't say yes, I'll come on. I didn't get in this picture if when Sarah reached out to me, I didn't say yes and say, let's see what we can do. And then here we are. And I think that's the part that really lets me know this is where I need to be. This is where my life has taken me. Yes, I went through some things, but I know where I'm supposed to be now. And where I'm supposed to be at this very minute, right here on this three-way Zoom call, recording, and just getting to meet some new friends and some lifelong friends. And I think that's cool. I think that's how it should be. And that's how we rebuild that camaraderie. And I just, again, can't thank you enough for your openness and honesty and authenticness. It's awesome. And I just, it's all, I'm getting emotional. So I'm going to stop there because I truly do love what this brings out and what we do. And I just hope people see this episode, get a hold of the book, watch the follow-up episode, and then we move on from there. But I want you to do this. I want you to plug your book. I don't want to go out, plug your book again, because we want this, not really a plug, your book, how they can get it. Can you give us 15 seconds of that real quick so people know how to get to it and the name and
Yeah.
all that good
So
stuff? Yeah.
it's called Relentless Courage, Winning the Battle Against Frontline Trauma. And I think the best place to get it is actually on Amazon. If you go on Amazon, it's on Kindle. There's paperback, hardcover. There's also the Audible version, which is my favorite. But if you don't like Amazon, you can also get it at Walmart.com, BarnesandNoble.com. There's a few other sites online. But the book, like I said, I guarantee it will blow your socks off. I guarantee that you won't be able to put it down or stop listening if you choose the Audible version. And when you're reading it, you're gonna be reading your own story, and that's where this power comes in. And I just the last thing I want is that anybody that does read this, please reach out to me, send me a message. I'm on pretty much every social media platform out there. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Parlor, Truth. I mean, you name it, I'm on it. Just type in
Good.
Sergeant Michael Sugru. I check my messages. I do get back to people. I'm very responsive, and I just literally want to hear your thoughts and your opinions. I want to hear, what this book did for you. That's my purpose, and that's what I want to know. So, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, brother. That was perfect.
Beautiful. Michael, thank you so much for joining us today. What an absolute pleasure. I can't wait for the next go round. I think Greg and I will both have the book read by tomorrow evening, so we can probably do it on next day after that.
Yeah, just let me know.
Awesome.
Send me a message. I'm ready.
Well, you're gonna hear some feedback. I'm like ooh, because I'm about to wrap up the one I'm reading now. It was like a 30-hour book, so I'm ready to jump into another one. So
Well, this one you can get done in the Audible 6 hours and 35 minutes, and I think most people read the book in anywhere from 5 to 7 hours. So it's a good quick read.
Okay, I can listen to 5 and 7 hours. If I read it, it'll take me about 3 weeks. So that's why I listen.
Good idea. Yeah, definitely a good idea.
All right, appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, don't leave yet. Have you left yet? Don't leave.
No, I'm still here.
Okay. And so we just like to talk afterwards. So that'll be the official part. Sometimes we'll get little clips from just the casual chats in here. But man, that was awesome. I keep wondering, can you run out of goosebumps?
Well,
we're gonna find out.
Like I said, I mean, wait till you read the book. It's our next conversation is gonna be on a whole nother level. I guarantee you. That's why I'm excited. I'm excited, and I gotta tell you guys, I mean, I don't make money off this book. I didn't do it for money. I do it because this book is saving lives, and I am just genuinely excited for you guys to read it because it's hard to explain. But like I said, and that's why I know this was a good conversation. But I guarantee you, our next conversation is going to be even better. I guarantee it.
Oh, that's good. We're working with a few people, and so I have my own nonprofit, Camaraderie Rescue Mission, Heroes, Badges, and Awards. You might have seen that out there floating around. I know it was Dr. Springer. We've had some chats in the past online, but I founded that 3 or 4 years ago, something like that. But it's awesome. And what I'm doing now is I'm trying to help I'm trying to help folks tell their story. And we're still recording, but I'm working with a group a guy that we literally teach people how to tell their story to where it's kind of like to where they're the hero going through it, and then you have a guy that's walking you through it. And it's one of those things to where we want to get out and help those nonprofits. We want to go out and help those folks that are struggling, that are doing the good work, that are doing the good things, or highlight folks like you. My thing was, if you're doing good work, if you have I always use a little girl in a lemonade stand. If she's raising money and she's out there and she's making cookies and selling lemonade to try to help, put a prosthetic leg on some kid, I would have rolled up one day in my RV and be like, we're going to help you out. And let's go and let's try to help her sell some stuff and do all that. So that's where we're going. And so I hope along our paths, once this stuff that I'm in the midst of some partnership conversations and all that now, but I'd love to come back and have that conversation as well, and get you back on and introduce you to a few people that I know that can sell some books, as well as get you out here and maybe get you speaking at one of our things. So
that'd be great.
For me, I love when you talked about your therapist, that your first therapist you saw, because I have a bad taste in my mouth for therapists. I think most of them are really messed up, and they have not gone over their trauma yet. Like they don't tell you a story because they can't, because they'll break down and that'll be the end of them for the next 3 hours or 3 days. So to have a therapist that can tell you her story, and I imagine it was a violent house break-in and multiple rapes and everything else that goes on with shit that happens to people, that they get over. Like, man, because that's what that other lady I was talking about that I talked to, that's what happened. She got gang raped twice, I think, and ends over it. So when she's telling her story, so when I was doing a second interview with her, and I couldn't remember, I was really anxious and I couldn't remember why I didn't want to talk to her again. And when she starts telling her story, it's like, that's why. But man, she tells it like she's just reading a story, so she's got emotion into it, but not trauma. And it was so powerful to see. So it's like, if you can get over that, nobody else has an excuse for shit.
Well, I'll tell you, and this is not to be aired or recorded. I mean, I know we're recording, but I'll tell you guys real quick the Reader's Digest version of the story. Again, not to be shared publicly, but she was a nurse. She lived in Oakland. She was married, went out to dinner. They came home. A guy came out of the house with a TV. He had burglarized the home, ended up shooting and killing her husband right in front of her, and then actually shot her in the stomach, and she survived. Her husband died. She survived being shot, and so I mean, it's about as bad as you can get, and it's unimaginable. And so, but the point of that too is that, by people sharing these types of things, especially leaders in positions of power and authority, that's where you build this trust. That's where you build the comfort for people to come to you when they're having issues, because most of these police departments and agencies have these toxic environments where nobody feels safe or comfortable, admitting when they need help or they have a problem. And we didn't even touch this on the episode, but suicide is the #1 killer, not just for military members and veterans, but for all first responders. And you're much more likely to die by your own hands than the hands of another. And so, and we can touch on that next time we talk, but that's the reality, is that, we spend over our career hundreds, if not thousands of hours training to fight the bad guy on the street. Defensive tactics, firearms, use of force, emergency driving, all these things. But how much time do we spend protecting ourselves from the greatest threat, which is really ourselves? That's the truth. That's what we're talking about here, is that suicide is the problem. And when you have an environment where people don't want to ask for help because of the ramifications on their career or things like that, they're not going to ask for help, and they're going to die. And we just had another suicide a couple weeks ago here, where a police sergeant married with 3 kids went home and shot himself in front of his house. And it's happening all the time, and we don't even hear about most of these things. And that's really, what needs to be addressed. That's what we need to focus on.
Like when you were talking about being overworked and stuff, it's like, man, that's even worse now, because you got zero time to decompress.
Yeah. But again, if you have a culture where I can pull up a patrol car next to my buddy and we can have those real conversations, that's all that's needed in most cases. But, and that's the ironic thing, is that when I was working with people, I trust them with my life going into an active shooter situation, domestic violence call, bar brawl, whatever. But I didn't trust them enough to talk about what I was dealing with and going through. But if we get to that level, we get to that point, it doesn't have to be psychologists and therapists. It can be literally our peer who we trust, that we can have these open conversations with and just be honest and real. That's the real solution right there.
Yeah, I think
I've had conversations with a lot of police officers, and they tell me, a lot of them, and honestly, it's probably been more that tell me this than don't. Is they're like, a lot of times I didn't trust my partner. Like,
Yeah.
I knew that maybe he would have my back, but if it came down to something, he was out for his own livelihood. He was out for his own, his own well-being. And so, and they're like, the police department, the EMS, but the police department specifically, they're like, it's really toxic, is because so much goes on that people are terrified of their own livelihood, that sometimes it's like, okay, we're doing this together, but you're always kind of looking over your back, like, what's this guy doing? Is he taking notes? What's going on? And it was very enlightening to me to have a few conversations. A guy that runs another nonprofit, like I said, retired police officer, he was like, man, it's different. Like in the military, you guys you kind of get that brotherhood, right? And it's kind of like,
Yeah.
you don't talk, you don't tell other people stuff. And we get around each other, we can say stuff like what we had tonight. You get a normal group of civilians around that aren't used to the word suicide, all of a sudden it shuts down the whole conversation. To where you get around a group of, folks like us that hear it or deal with it on a regular basis, it enables us to talk about it because they're not comfortable, and it's something that, and the thing that surprised me, and I'll tell you this, is I was out at a group, I was at a ranch, and we were doing an equine retreat. And there was these 6 civilian ladies that were there. And I just kind of assumed that 22 a day military, that's just something common lingo for 22 suicides a day military. And I said that to them as I was talking to them. Said, yeah, I'm, Greg, I do this and this, and the founder of whatever. And, one of our main things is we're trying to get past the 22 a day and provide help. And they all stood there dumbfounded. And I was like, hang on. One person raised their hand. They're like, what is that? What is 22 a day? And I'm like, does anybody here? 6 ladies. I was like, does anybody here know? And they're like, no. And that totally blew me away. With as much publicity and as much, emphasis as we put on, people seeking help and getting help. This was a 0 for 6 of people that even knew that there was a problem, that even knew that there was 22 a day was a thing. And it's, I think it's 44 or more. It's actually much bigger than that due to reporting.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really shocking that they didn't understand. And I realized when I interact with folks that are maybe away from the military or I have to speak differently. I have to learn how to have that communication and speak in a different manner that still gets the same message across. And it was really, like I said, for me, it was like enlightening. Like I just couldn't believe that they didn't know, because it had become so commonplace in the folks that I was associated with. And I was like, holy crap, they really don't know. And as much as we talk about it and try to help with it, and all the nonprofits and things that are out there, and it's hard to believe sometimes that the general population still doesn't get it, but there's probably more that don't than do. And that's why we've got a lot of work left to do.
Sure, less of us know than do know, Greg, for sure on that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why we're here, and that's why we're going to talk again. So
absolutely, I'm looking forward to it. I'm telling you, honestly, I get excited pretty easily sometimes, but I'm excited about this book, Sarah, a lot of times. So it doesn't take much to get me fired up. I enjoy life. I enjoy people, but I do go through a lot of books, and I'm really excited about yours, because I want to send you this note, like, hey, dude, I just knocked this sucker out, and it's great.
Yeah, please do.
Anything short of that, but yeah,
no,
Mike, if you
want
can
to hear
send
the raw, uncensored feedback. So
yeah, so if you can send me a link to it, I'll get Santi, who does our editing for us for the videos. I'll get him to post it on the video for us and on the YouTube channel.
Sounds good.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
No, good stuff.
All right, guys.
Anything
else
you
guys?
I think I'm out of goosebumps, so let's get on with this.
Sarah, your hair got a little bit more salty. You lost some in that conversation. It used to be salt.
Mine's all right here.
Yeah. Cyril's just got some salt and some deep root end or something. He's got a bleach, so we're good.
The love in the air, man. The love in the air.
All right, we'll talk soon, guys.
Appreciate you guys.
Thank you so much, buddy.
Thank you.